Alright, EA Ermor, turn 86. Possibly some Van Heers are coming out to play this turn, but otherwise, yeah. In fact, we have no battles this turn. So that is relatively unusual and will change soon. Okay, we have a Mind Hunt. We were trying to get the seducer that's in this fort. I don't think she was named David, so there's probably like some scouts and stuff in there, and like, yeah, Russ has just been doing a really good job with that. I feel like we've been getting somewhat unlucky, but probably not. Probably there's just like plenty of scouts stuffed wherever he needs them. We bring in a few summons. We bring in another sea troll. We're definitely going to need one of those. This is on top of our throne fort that's near Niefelheim, so we are definitely expecting some cold related plays, so we're going to need somebody fairly hefty that's going to, survive a lot of nukes and cast some water magic for us. And, a dire portent, like, sure, why not? Yeah, Niefelheim cast something, nothing that's going to be good for us. We'll have to take a look and see what that is. And we're still searching for magic sites because, why not? I think this is, this is the army that hung out, not really sure what to do with yet. And hey, we actually do find a magic site, so that's nice. And then, yeah, we do catch a lot of battles. They're just not involving us. So this first one, Theridos attacking Niefelheim, like, yeah, just some raiding with some ghosts. Also some shamblers here for whatever reason. And like, yeah, there's just a little bit of province defense here. I think the ghosts are going to come away with it, no problem. And as a free spawn nation, especially ethereal chaff like free spawn nation, Theridos does like low commitment raiding like really well. Because most province defense really struggles with that ethereal. They just have mundane weapons. And then, yeah, this is the computer just doing computer stuff. Who is suffering this turn? Oh, good. It's Niefelheim. Niefelheim is suffering. And like, yeah, we're not going to analyze what the computer's doing because it's just crazy. But it does bring more than enough stuff to take out one province defense. And it's nice that it's not attacking us. And then Theridos doing their part to try to help keep the computer down, but low commitment rating, like that's one of the biggest differences between playing single player and multiplayer. A lot of the low commitment rating that's really important in multiplayer is just completely useless against the computer because it just has the resources to put like all kinds of stuff everywhere. Now that said, I mean, it's not impossible that the ghosts come away because it's still pretty much mostly mundane weapons, but I don't think so. I think there's just too much stuff there. So yeah, Theridos is defeated here by the AI, as happens, because AI has a lot of resources. But Niefelheim is doing their part. Okay, this is a cracked fort of Niefelheim's, and I was kind of curious, but yeah, right, this is not low commitment. This is like, medium, high commitment. There's a lot of, oh boy, with the computer, right? It just brings all kinds of stuff. So let's turn on team colored squares and watch this madness unfold. The computer is just going to throw like all kinds of stuff. There may be some gems. We saw some of their Kappa onlys, the big Jinn, which are pretty dangerous. So it looks like a mixture of like imp summoning and undead summoning for some chaff. And then, Niefelheim just has like some super combatant-y, sort of fellows. And it does look like this guy has been kitted out for melee, and I imagine the Scrotty has as well. Yeah, although fairly fatigued out. But with the amount of regeneration that these guys have, I think it's pretty unlikely. Let's see, Light of the Northern Star, Grip of Winter, right? And the AI is unlikely to have cast cold resistance. Like, yeah, we can see a variety of its units like already starting to struggle, with that cold. And of course, like, Grip of Winter, Ill Winter, the whole world's turning into an ice ball. All this said, it's not impossible that Niefelheim loses some casters, and they're definitely going to lose some chaff. Like, yeah, this is probably a rout. Like, yeah, so Niefelheim comes away with it without too much loss, I think. But I mean, at the end of the day, the computer is able to throw, a lot of stuff. But yeah, they don't really lose anything of import. Like, in fact, they actually come away with -2 casualties. And the only thing they lose is a Mound King. It's not impossible that their one commander that retreated off died in the retreat, but probably pretty unlikely. And then, like, yeah, the computer loses just like a ton of stuff. And, Niefelheim knows what they're doing. Speaking of Niefelheim knowing what they're doing, there's a Storm and Russ. So I think he poked his head in. Like, yeah, and this is the real deal here. So right away, we can see a bunch of battlefield-wide buffs going down cooldown, mass regeneration. I imagine this fellow in here is Ironbark. Yeah, right. So like, why just stick with the regeneration on your bless right, when you can double the regeneration from the spell? Fire Fend, right, in case there's any fire stuff going on. And then let's see, darkness. Probably, actually, I'm not 100% sure who that's coming from. And then Russ has doubled down on like the fort defense spells. So he put up the flames here, right? Which I don't think is going to matter too much, although it will keep like skeleton chaff away. And he's also cast like the spell that gives him these marble lion defenders who are like, yeah, you know, I mean, they're okay. They're probably not worth it in terms of like the gem investment, but you know, for your final stand in your capital, like, yeah, why not some marble lions? And then let's see like what else he's got in here. So yeah, a good number of skin shifters, right? Plenty of mages. He's also summoned in some woodland spirits who you don't really see too often. So yeah, it'll be kind of interesting. They have the homesickness, so they can't really move out of the province that they're summoned in, which makes their use somewhat marginal. So I think kind of more of a, you know, desperation summon, just like something that he can summon on short notice in the capital with the gems that he has. But like I said, not a unit I see too much, so we'll have to see if they get up to anything useful. And then a decent amount of whites over here, quite a few specters, a ton of specters actually. Like each of these guys is like 22 death gems. Yeah, this guy's been given a skull staff, so like there's probably gonna be, yeah, each of these guys it looks like has been given a skull staff. Okay, no, this guy's been given a water bracelet and some water gems. This guy might be jumping into a communion. Like, yeah, he's got some blood slaves here. I mean, you know, this, that, and the other. So like, yeah, I'll be watching this battle a couple of times most likely. And I don't know, these are the ones that can like, yeah, bringer of misfortune. I wonder if we've had some of these running around in our territory. We already have pretty high misfortune, so you know, it's not the end of the world. Probably not worth it. So let's see, I'm not sure what that was. Doom probably from one side or the other. Let's take a look. Yeah, so Niefelheim has been cursed, so Russ threw up Doom. And it looks like it was just Russ. Like, yeah, here's all the globals stacking up. A lot of bugs coming out, of course. I imagine both sides are putting up Howl. The Bringers of Fortune are flying in, and like, yeah, again, they're for strategic map stuff. So they're probably just going to die. Looks like Niefelheim got up Fog Warriors. Let's take a brief, oh boy, I don't know what that was. Okay, so it looks like Russ's Fog Warriors went up. We got some Wave Warriors, which is like an AoE liquid body. So, you know, it helps, or it provides the physical damage resistant types. So let's see here. So we have Ravenous Swarm coming from Niefelheim. So it looks like Niefelheim is not really planning on creating a lot of undead. And of course, Russ has a lot of permanent undead that have been summoned, so that makes sense. Relief coming from Niefelheim as well. So possibly we're going to see a fatigue play here, or maybe he's just expecting to have to cut through a lot of chaff. Light of the Northern Star also coming from Niefelheim, so trying to increase the level of his astral casters, although this is a spell that works for both sides, and Russ does have some astral wizards, so it'll actually help them out somewhat as well. Then we have Howl coming from Russ, and then Relief also coming from Russ, Darkness from Niefelheim, Wailing Winds from Russ, and then Quagmire, I think, from Russ. I think they're the ones with the Hydromancer, but don't quote me on that. And then, right, and this is the Flames, like the more strategic map spell. And then, of course, you know, like I said, there's probably some protection buffs in there. Let's take a quick look. Yeah, so this looks like mass protection, I think, on Niefelheim's side, and then on Russ's side, there's a random skeleton that didn't get any protection. Doesn't really look like there's any battlefield-wide protection buff from Russ yet, anyway. Although I do think we're starting to get past the point at which, like, yeah, round 6. So the scripts are about to end, and some of Niefelheim's thugs are already here in the back line. It looks like, for the most part, Russ has put a lot, maybe all of his units, not as Long Dead Horsemen, but a lot of his units are on Guard Commander, which, you know, they've been doing kind of all game long, and, like, yeah, it just seems like a pretty good play, honestly, like especially in this sort of situation, and particularly because Russ has Wailing Winds up, so they kind of want to just sit back. It's like, yeah, all right, you come to me. Okay, there's a Phoenix Pyre in there, probably from Niefelheim. I'm guessing. I don't know if Russ actually put up... Yeah, they have cold resistance up, so it looks like they managed to get probably... Okay, maybe they still don't have like the battlefield wide, because like this Vine Ogre does not have any cold resistance. Oh wait, the skin shifters have cold resistance built in. So, but this fellow got some fire resistance on him, and it looks like probably Serpent's Blessing. No. So, oh yeah, right, because he's a Vine Man, so I don't think he cares about poison. So yeah, it looks like the resistance situation is maybe a bit inconsistent on Russ's side. So that could matter, although yeah, we're not really seeing any like Firestorm or any of like the elemental, or for that matter Foul Vapors wipes. So it's kind of just like a buffed up troop battle. And like yeah, the Long Dead Horsemen are holding up like pretty well, considering, though they're pretty unlikely to ever kill any of the Nephil giants. But again, because of Wailing Winds, right, Rust kind of just needs to extend out the length of this battle, and they're doing a really good job of it. I will say that, like, yeah, I've kind of been looking at the Jarls and the Nephil giants and stuff, and they don't have a lot of weaknesses. Their morale is like probably the one thing that you could conceivably attack. I hesitate to even call it a weakness, because it's not like it's low. And it's like, out of a very upsetting stat line, it is the lowest stat available. So I do think that like Wailing Winds is a pretty clutch play, and I'm actually honestly sad that Vanheim didn't come out, because we have a bunch of Twice-Born Air Death Augurs that are casters of Wailing Winds, and we need them to die. So I'm really hoping we get the crack so we can send them in, get them killed, get them back to the fort, and distribute it out to the armies that we need. Speaking of Wailing Winds, some of Niflheim's globals have gone down. Yeah, sorry, I have no idea what's going on in this battle. Some of the skin shifters have run forward. Those are probably from, I imagine, bodyguards of commanders who died. Because like Niefelheim, right, he has at least one thug that's been hanging out back here, doing a really good job. He's almost, not completely surrounded by skin shifters, but completely surrounded. So I imagine there's a few commanders that have been dying. This is probably who did Phoenix Pyre. Yeah, although, like, yeah, he picked up some afflictions. I imagine he didn't have this many afflictions at the start of the battle, though this is not his first battle, so, yeah. And then Gifts from Heaven. Not actually sure who that is coming from. There's an argument to be made for either side to be casting that. And so, like, yeah, Niflheim is still fighting, but they lost Darkness, so they've had at least some retreats. And I do think Russ is actually the only one with Howl up, which is kind of significant, because Howl's going to keep generating chaff, right, and keep slowing down this battle, and, again, the longer that it takes. Now, we're a pretty long way from turn timer, and let's see, did that thug disappear? Yeah, I'm not seeing that Niflheim thug anymore, so he may have routed, but he may have died, and, like, yeah. The King of Magma here is kind of looking like he might be in trouble, although his fatigue is pretty low, right? And he has Phoenix Pyre, so he's going to be fairly difficult to get rid of. And, like, yeah, there's not too many commanders left on Niflheim's side, right? So the Nephil Giants have not routed, right? We can see morale 21. I guess, like, yeah, their attack skill is lower, but you can't really attack an attack skill, I don't think, and they don't have very good precision, So yeah, I don't know. Their age is fairly high, but they have a really high max age. So anyway, yeah, there's not a lot of ways to attack these fellows, although at least some of those unidentified spells, I think, were the spells like Rust, so like their equipment got damaged. And that is fairly significant. I should probably add that in to my armies, right? Because that is an issue somewhat that these Nephil Giants have. Maybe, I don't know. They deal a ton of damage individually, but because they have so few attacks, it's like their overall damage output is kind of slow. So it's like when they hit you, it's probably going to kill you. But, especially in the case of like Russ's Sacreds, who probably can take a hit or two from these, Nephil Sacreds, making it so that these Nephil Sacreds don't hit as hard, although, wow. I'm not sure if we click through, yeah. If they're still doing 41 damage, I'm not really sure how useful this damage weapon is. I guess if it was going to be higher than 41, it's good that it's not higher than that, but I'm not sure it's going to matter for us, because if it's 41, even with damaged equipment, there's not a lot. Even our trolls, maybe our sea trolls, it might be kind of relevant for. They'll take like 2 hits instead of 1. And so yeah, Russ comes away with this, which is really good news for us, mostly because, you know, now like our main army in the north is now next door to Russ's capital on top of their thrones. So, you know, we'll see what they do, whether they try to, you know, rebuild their force, because I'm sure they took plenty of casualties. Speaking of which, let's take a look. So yeah, I mean, as far as like a Niefelheim battle is concerned, a fairly painful one. He loses, you know, 2 of his super combatants, or kind of heavy thugs, and then he loses, you know, a little less than half of his sacreds, but still 20 Nephil giants is pretty significant. But again, just kind of highlights that like Russ with Wailing Winds, you're sort of just delaying the inevitable. I am a little bit curious to take a look at the strategic map. If Niefelheim didn't secure the retreat routes, this could actually turn into a very different story. And we do know that Russ has plenty of stealthy units, and they're a good player. So I would not put it past Russ to have attempted, at least, to try to cut retreat routes. At the same time, I would be surprised if Niefelheim, you know, didn't guard their retreat routes whatsoever. Still, even with retreat routes open, probably at least a few of these units, maybe some of the casters, died in the retreat. So, you know, Niefelheim has turned around, but not a super painful loss. On Russ's side, it's looking pretty painful. So, you know, they still have like 130 units-ish, maybe a little fewer. And then in terms of losses, they lose all the long dead horsemen, which is somewhat significant. You can see they managed to get, you know, 17 kills. And then, of course, always with the skin shifters, 78 kills. They lose the majority of the skin shifters, though they still have a, you know, relevant number left. Their mage losses are also relatively high, right? They lose half their white mages. They lose 1 specter, leaving them with 4, so still respectable. They lose most of the Rusian wizards. All of their cap onlys survive. Some of their summons survive. They lose 2 of 5 flame spirits. So I mean, like, significant mage losses. But again, this is still a scary force that is left. And you see, like, the woodland spirits, they didn't do too much, at least in terms of killing. They may have been somewhat useful just in terms of like tar pitting, right? Keeping the battle going so that Wailing Winds can do its work. And yeah, kind of highlighting like Marble Lions, like, you know, again, more of a tar pit, and it's like, hey, I can just do it. It's my capital, like pull out all the stops. So yeah, a very interesting battle, and we'll have to take a look on their strategic map to see if, you know, is even more significant. And then it looks like Therados is getting attacked by like, yeah, just, you know, some wolves. This is, I think, Illwinter related. They have quite a bit of province defense, so I think they'll come away with this, because like, yeah, wolves just are not very good. And then of course they're going to HP route the werewolf. Although then again, Deer Tribe aren't very good either, but yeah, there it goes. Yeah, so they come away with it. Quite a bit of province defense there. And then wow, 11 water gems. That's very nice. I guess it makes sense, you know, as an enormous icicle. Yes, the world is turning into an ice ball. And then, yeah, some children are disappearing at night somewhere, like, it's the least of our problems. And then we foresaw a major event. Okay, yeah, there's going to be an arena death match. We will not be submitting anyone to that. And then I think we've got, yeah, 3 breaches. So this is the throne province next to Russ's capital. This is the one down by Helheim. And of course, this is Abyssea with all the Vanheers inside. And then, of course, like, we have some starvation, because of course we do. So yeah, I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we did about it. This should be the last of these From the Future review styles for a little while. But there's a good amount to cover, so let's jump into it. The main thing is we are setting up for the war against Niefelheim, which should kick off next turn based off these movements. And like, really our plan is to, you know, try to pack the throne fortifications with as much defense as we can, and then just go on an all-out offensive everywhere else that we're able to muster. So we're pulling a lot of our human mages and human troops out of this fortification, because again, we're pretty much expecting Murdering Winter or, you know, some sort of wipe spell to be hitting. So we're creating like some kind of heavier raiding squads that we'll be sending out to try to break, you know, the initial line and then possibly subdivide those in the future. Niefelheim is covering a lot of territory, and, you know, they are fighting a number of people, AI Ubar, Therados, Russ, although Russ is down to it, and they'll soon be fighting us. So while they have a ton of dangerous stuff, and, you know, I don't expect this war to go well, I do think there's going to be opportunity for, you know, raiding. And so we're hoping that, all this stuff on top of this fort jumps back on top of the throne, leaving behind maybe not that much, and then we can break through. Same kind of thing here. There's not a whole lot here that we can see. We're also sneaking out, a lot of our little swarm raiders. Some of them, a little on the deep side, but we probably won't hit those provinces immediately off the bat. We'll just kind of use them as scouts in the opening of the war. These guys, of course, will run out of steam pretty quickly, pretty much, the first province that they hit. To try to alleviate that, I believe, we're bringing up, I think, just the one scout, possibly a second scout somewhere, although we are pretty low on gems. But basically, this guy's job is to just reload any of the raiders that survive. So they'll just come meet up with him, and then they'll continue to raid deeper in Niefelheim's territory. Whereas, a lot of our other groups that we're setting up are kind of our more standard augur groups or lizard augur groups, and these guys, a lot of them have the fire jars, so they can continue to raid. Some of them even have the terracotta soldiers, so the bodyguards will at least be a little less susceptible to getting blown up by the fire communion. The other thing is we are pulling a lot of the terracotta soldiers, not all of them, but a good amount of them we're pulling out to join raiding squads, because I realized these guys are not going to survive Murdering Winter well at all. They have quite a few resistances. Cold is not among them. They don't have a lot of hit points. They don't ever heal. So yeah, these guys actually a pretty terrible pick for somewhere you're expecting to get blasted by Murdering Winter. So instead, we're bringing in some fire snakes. And we're also bringing in a Bane Lord. I don't love Bane Lords, but, it's kind of looking at the forces in here. We really don't have much other than our mages, most of whom are human, right? Banefire is probably a good choice. We do have a good amount of twice-borning going on. I think there's, a fellow who's twice-borning himself. So, Banefire is, I think, really the most realistic thing that can kill the Nephil Giants for us, because they're magic resistance is high enough that trying to soul slay through all of them is going to be a pretty tall order. So we'll see. I'm sure, we will mix some soul slay in, and of course we'll definitely have some Banefire, but it would be nice to, have a few thugs that are kind of killy and at least have a hope of killing some Nephil Giants. Of course, we are planning on relying on Wailing Winds to just keep Niefelheim out of our forts, so we don't necessarily have to kill the giants, but then we're never really going to be able to win that way. So while not losing is good, trying to figure out ways that we can actually kill those giants, it's going to be necessary. So whether or not Bane Lords are the way to do that, we shall see. Otherwise, mostly the same kind of raiding groups that we've been seeing. We're just going to try to hit Niefelheim in as many places as possible. Did make a decision about this army, so it's not going to reload on chaff. It's just going to march forward into Bar's territory and probably go to maybe attack this fort. I think the next move we'll probably make is up to here, so we have the option of unlocking our fort here and hopefully preventing Niefelheim from pressing too deeply into our territory, at least through normal phase movement. And if Niefelheim doesn't press in this direction, maybe takes this stuff and heads for our throne instead, then we can threaten this fort down here and make life difficult for them. This does leave this throne somewhat open, but I just felt like I'm not even sure our defense is really going to be even that much more of an effective defense than the throne defenders. We are going to ping a scout off of it just to actually see exactly what's going on. I don't think I've seen this throne, or at least it's been long enough in the game that I've forgotten exactly what gems that Solar Serpent has. And then we're also going to storm here with our eagles, fingers crossed that it's an empty fort. And then we're also going to send our augurs in with the Wind of Death communion, and hopefully they'll get themselves killed and take some elves down with them. Otherwise, recruitment is kind of focused on the Niefelheim border. We are recruiting troops in places, which is maybe kind of questionable. These troops will be useful in a raiding capacity to a certain extent, but we're recruiting troops and we're definitely cutting mages kind of on the other side of our empire, probably cutting them down here as well. So we're cutting mages for kind of marginal human troops. Of course, the mages we're going to be recruiting are kind of marginal human mages. And a lot of these guys are going to be, pretty far away from the front lines. So, I don't know, kind of back and forth, even in retrospect. And then probably the final thing of note is Gugner here is taking our magic carpet for a joyride instead of doing anything useful. So he was leading a bunch of trolls around, but trolls are incredibly slow. And let's see, we handed them off to a regular commander because we were thinking, well, probably kind of want our Earthcaster in place in case this fortification gets magic phased on top of. We want to get him inside there as quickly as possible. I guess actually if got magic phased on top of, he would bump into whatever it was. But now he's going to be getting there even slower since I forgot to reissue the move order. And so he's just touring the countryside on the magic carpet. 10 out of 10 would forge again. And then research has not really changed. Still going for Thaumaturgy 7. We won't quite hit it this next turn. And we don't actually have anything queued up. We don't really have any desperate needs at the moment. So we'll have to see what I decide on next. And finally, one thing that is relevant to us, though not directly tied to us, we did notice Niefelheim does have one of the underwater forts, so Therados is sieging it at least, but it's not cracked. So even though Therados is doing some raiding on the land, I think that kind of tells you how the war is going. I'm sure we'll do more throne talks in the turns to come, but Niefelheim is sitting at 5 thrones right now. You need 8 to win. Of course, Niefelheim may have more than 5 thrones right now because there are 3 unclaimed thrones. Now, we do know that at least one of these thrones is under those indie defenders that I was talking about, but otherwise, I don't think there's too many, if any, independent thrones left. So Niefelheim is not too far from a throne victory and might actually be quite close. And of course, this is the reason that, we are pouring troops into troops and mages into just about every throne that we can manage. We're actually getting like a decent number of mages down here on this throne. Still don't really have too much, in the way of units, but hopefully we have a little bit of time. This throne is pretty deep in our territory, but again, magic phase movement is going to change what constitutes long distance. I think that more or less covers turn 86.